The trouble began long before anyone realized. On a bright afternoon when the city noise blended with the crackling heat rising from the pavement, a single father named Corvin Hale stood at a construction site he could no longer afford to work at. He was a tall, quietly strong man with tired eyes that told the truth he never spoke. Life had been heavier than his shoulders should have carried. And yet, in the middle of that ordinary day, fate would twist, placing him directly in the path of a billionaire, whose world was collapsing in a way money could never stop. Everything unraveled the moment Corvin saw the shadows rushing toward a woman he didn't know, a woman dressed in simple elegance, stepping out of a glossy black car unaware of the danger closing in. In that heartbeat, Corvin had a choice: walk away or step in. He didn't think. His feet moved on their own. That was the moment everything changed. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unseen heroes among us, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness. It helps our channel grow so we can bring more stories like this to you. Corvin Hale had never imagined himself the protector of anyone with wealth or power. He lived paycheck to paycheck, trying to raise his 9-year-old son, Liron, in a world where opportunity came rarely and usually at a cost. His wife had passed 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving Corvin to navigate fatherhood alone, learning to braid hair for school events, patch scraped knees, and answer the quiet questions of a child who missed the softness of a mother's comfort. Corvin worked any job he could find, from construction to night shift warehouse runs, sometimes going without sleep, just so Liron wouldn't go without food. The city didn't care about men like him, but Corvin had long accepted it. He would be strong so his son wouldn't have to be. That day, however, even strength felt thin. The construction project he relied on had halted due to legal issues, leaving him with nothing but dust-covered boots and a few crumpled bills in his pocket. He had walked outside to clear his thoughts when he noticed a luxury vehicle rolling to a stop near the street. The woman who stepped out was elegant but understated, wearing pale colors that glowed softly under the sun. Her expression was calm, almost too calm to be someone used to chaos. Corvin wouldn't have noticed her long if not for the two men trailing behind the parked cars, their movements sharp, their intentions wrong. Corvin recognized danger instantly. He had seen enough in life to understand it without needing explanations. His instincts sharpened like metal striking metal. Something about the woman triggered a pull inside him, not attraction but responsibility. She didn't look like someone who expected harm, yet the danger was coming anyway. The men moved with purpose, too fast, too focused. Corvin dropped the lunchbox he'd been holding, his muscles tightening as he stepped off the sidewalk, lifting his voice just loud enough to break the air. The woman turned, startled, just as the men surged forward. Before they reached her, Corvin closed the distance, placing himself between her and the threat. The men's surprise bought him a split second. He didn't fight with finesse. He fought with raw, survival-born strength. He blocked one man's swing and shoved him back hard enough to send him stumbling across the pavement. The second man lunged with something metallic glinting in his sleeve, and Corvin met him head-on, gripping his arm and twisting with all the force his heavy body could produce. The scuffle lasted seconds, but the city seemed to freeze around them, dust hanging in sunlight as if suspended in time. When the men realized they had miscalculated, they retreated into the crowd, disappearing before sirens could be heard. The woman exhaled shakily, but her fear wasn't the panicked kind Corvin expected. It was the fear of someone who had long been hunted by. She could not control. She stared at him, and in her eyes he saw gratitude mixed with a depth of exhaustion that mirrored his own. She introduced herself as Maricel Easton, a name that meant nothing to him until she explained that she was the CEO of Easton Global, one of the city's largest finance conglomerates. But in that moment, she wasn't a billionaire. She was just a woman who had almost been harmed, and Corvin had simply done what his heart demanded. Maricel insisted on thanking him properly, but Corvin shook his head, already turning away. He wasn't interested in rewards. He had a son waiting for him, a bag of groceries to stretch across a week, and pride that refused to bend. Before she could finish speaking, he walked off, dust on his boots, sun on his back, and worry about life pressing against his spine as heavily as ever. But Maricel Easton was not the kind of woman who forgot the things that mattered. 3 days later, she arrived at the small, aging apartment complex where Corvin and Leron lived. She had found him through witnesses and nearby surveillance, but more importantly, she had looked into who he was. She discovered he had no criminal record, just a life marked by loss and unfair battles. She learned that he had been a devoted husband, a grieving widower, and a hard-working father doing everything he could to stay afloat. She stood in front of his door in the warm daylight, uncertain whether her presence would be welcomed. Corvin answered with quiet surprise, wiping dust from his shirt, while Leron peeked from behind him with curious eyes. Maricel spoke gently, explaining that the men who attacked her had ties to a hostile takeover attempt within her company. Someone wanted her out, and they were willing to use fear to achieve it. She believed Corvin had saved her life, and though he had walked away, she had not. She offered him a job as part of her private security, not because he was trained, but because she trusted his heart. More than any professional certification, Corvin wanted to refuse. He worried about stepping into a world so different from his own, about failing in a position he didn't understand, about exposing his son to risks tied to powerful people. But when Maricel gently looked at Leron and offered not only a job, but stability, health benefits, and a salary that could lift them out of the grey exhaustion of poverty, Corvin felt something crack inside him. Pride and fear wrestled quietly, but the thought of giving his son a better life carried more weight than either. He accepted. From that day onward, Corvin entered a realm he had never imagined. Clean offices smelling of polished glass, conference rooms where million-dollar decisions were made casually, and hallways where people whispered when he passed, unsure why a man like him was walking among executives. He remained quiet, unassuming, always near Maricel yet never overstepping. He didn't see himself as a protector of wealth. He was a protector of a woman who had shown him genuine respect. But the threats against Maricel grew, becoming more calculated. Suspicious vehicles appeared outside her residence, unknown individuals attempted to access her building, and documents were leaked to damage her reputation. Corvin became her anchor, steady, alert, unshakable. Yet even as he fulfilled the role, he carried guilt like a stone in his chest. He felt out of place, a single father from the bottom rungs of society working beside a billionaire. He feared becoming dependent on her generosity, feared that one day she would move on and he would fall back into the life he had barely escaped. Maricel, on the other hand, found unexpected comfort in Corvin's presence. For the first time in years, someone around her had no hidden motives. He didn't want her money, her influence, or her name. He wanted only to keep her safe, and she found solace in knowing someone existed in her world purely out of integrity. She began inviting Corvin and Leron to small daytime gatherings, brunch in her garden, charity events at local parks, quiet lunches where she observed how gently Corvin treated his son and how naturally Leron laughed near her, as if sensing she was someone they both could trust. But Corvin noticed something else, eyes watching them, cameras following Maricel's every move, headlines twisting stories that were never true. One afternoon, while escorting her into a hotel for a meeting, Corvin saw a man taking photographs from across the street. The man fled when Corvin approached, leaving a sense of dread behind. Corvin felt a growing certainty that danger was building like storm clouds. He didn't fear for himself, but he deeply feared for Leron. He couldn't risk his son being caught in the crossfire of corporate warfare. When he lay awake that night, watching Leron sleep peacefully under the warm glow of the small lamp, Corvin made a decision that tore at every part of him. He had to protect Maricel, but he could not stay close to her world. He had to remove himself and his son from harm's way. The next morning, before dawn lit the city with soft gold, Corvin typed a resignation letter with trembling hands. He left it neatly folded on Maricel's office desk before the building filled with people. And then, without looking back, he walked away. Maricel arrived an hour later and froze at the sight of the letter. The words were simple, polite, and completely heartbreaking. Corvin thanked her for everything she had done, but said he could not put his child at risk. He wished her safety and success, but asked for no further contact. Maricel sank into her chair, tears burning her eyes, realizing she had not only lost her protector but a rare soul who had shown her what genuine humanity looked like.